Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Revere podcast. It's myself and Billy again, joined over Zoom for the foreseeable future, as we mentioned in the previous episode. But Billy, how are you doing today, mate?
Very well. 2 clean sheets in a week. Can't beat it.
Well, when we were first talking about doing our kind of weekly episode, we said there's a lot of excitement today as a sort of one goal to kind of talk about. And I know obviously there's a lot more than that, but I guess we kind of made the mistake last week of going into the game that we kind of forgot about in midweek. And to kind of avoid that, if we're going to kind of jump straight into the action and kind of look at what happened in this week as a Norwich fan, we should probably start with the one that's fresh in our minds with the Swansea game. Obviously, it's the second week in a row now that we've been looking back at a week which we've picked up 4 points and gone unbeaten. So right now, apart from everything else in the world, being a Norwich fan is actually not too bad at the moment. But
Yeah.
if we start with the Swansea game, Bill, what were your, because I know we spoke a lot during the game and there was quite a lot of high emotions, as there always is whenever we go through our text chats. It's pretty horrific, to be honest. But what were your initial reaction to the game?
Just buzzing, to be honest. Like, I think me and you both rate Swansea really highly, and the job that Steve Cooper's doing there, and to come away with 3 points is so crucial. I think you mentioned obviously sort of like the congested fixture schedule at the moment, and we almost seem to be viewing games in tandem, don't we? We're viewing them in chunks, and you can almost take the Millwall and the Swansea game as a pair in a really bizarre way. And I think you're right. Like we'll obviously talk about the Millwall game later on, but 4 points is probably what we would have expected from these two games, and we've got that. The manner of them sort of coming around, I suppose, is irrelevant. I mean, of course, Swansea I think they probably could have got a point out of it. I don't think they played well enough to merit all 3 points. I think they had chances, but they're a good attacking side. You know, that's kind of what they're built around. But so did we. I think about some of the opportunities that we had, which maybe we'll get onto in a little bit more detail in a moment. But I was just buzzing, to be honest. And as soon as that Stiepermann goal went in, it was typical Norwich of recent times, and I just felt so confident sort of to see out the remainder of the game. And yes, it's a brilliant way to go into the international break.
It's weird because it really did remind me of the kind of Norwich of old in the way that I almost like knew there was a goal that was going to come. Like I feel like because there've been so many occasions now where late on in games we've scored that goal to win the game, or especially in the kind of recent weeks, it's almost like again it's got to that point where I feel like there's always a chance we can score. And it's almost like I shouldn't even watch the first half of the game. It makes no sense to watch the first half of the game because all it is normally is just us going into the break 0-0. Or even if we're 1-0 down, we kind of save that for that last 10, 15 minutes, which is unbelievable, really, when you think about it. I will admit, I think it's a tough one, right? Because I said to you halfway through the game, I said, this game is written all over a 1-0 either side. That's all it's going to be. There's no way it's anything different. And ironically, the difference was that we were just way more clinical. Swansea could have been 3-0 up by the time that we even got that chance, with Marco Stiepermann. And, as much as I want to sit here and go, Tim Crull was the best keeper, in the championship, and made 3 unbelievable saves. One was really good from Ayew. But the other 2 from Jamal Lowe were just straight at him. I mean, all that Swansea needed was a little bit more of kind of a killer edge in front of goal, and Norwich are out of the game at that point. But I mean, I guess if we kind of, because of the fact that there wasn't a huge amount kind of going on in that game, I just wanted to kind of maybe highlight some kind of individual performances and get your kind of thoughts on them, because not just looking at the actual kind of statistics in terms of their kind of ratings after the game, but generally just from watching the game, it was pretty much by every player just a really solid performance all game, wasn't it?
No, you're right. I think you mentioned the messages during the game. I think any credibility we have as a podcast duo is just would have been eradicated, because there's some outrageous statements coming out from both sides. I mean, you mentioned the one that either side. I think that's probably the only one either of us got right in terms of predicting.
No one has to know.
I think, yeah. I mean, Stiepermann was an interesting performance. I'm not sure the praise he's getting at the moment would have come about if he hadn't put that ball in the back of the net. But I suppose that's football, isn't it? And it's a results-based business. So I think I'll probably avoid talking about Steeperman too much in this podcast because, like I said, I think my maybe perception of him might have been a little bit more different had he not done that. But yeah, the Tim Crull one's an interesting one as well because, like, rightly so, there's a lot of praise about sort of Tim Crull, but I think he's had better games than that in a weird way. That doesn't take away what a good performance it was, but you're right. I mean, that Jamal Lowe one when it's hit him at the chest, like he's made the save, and that's what a goalkeeper's there for. And he was excellent, but I mean, come on, like I think you said you could have saved that, and I think you're right to be fair because that was straight on. But then there was those moments in the games when he comes out and he collects it, and he's got this he just sort of radiates sort of confidence and a like the demands he places upon his centre backs really help them as well, and that he was excellent. I don't think the saves that people talking about maybe are as good as some people are making out from a technical standpoint, but like I say, he's there to keep the ball out of the back of the net, and he's done that twice in the space of a week.
Well, it reminds.
I mean, go on.
Well, I was just gonna. It reminds me of ironically Biakowski, or however you say it, his performance against us for Millwall, in the way that all he kind of did was save shots that were straight at him, but he kind of got the plaudits for saving the game and whatnot. It felt a little bit like that for Tim Crull tonight. Like, it kind of, don't get me wrong, you've got to be there to save it, and I'm sure there's a heavy amount of things that as non-goalkeepers we can't see in terms of positioning and whatnot. But really,
oh, for sure, that's what I mean. Yeah,
it just appeared to me like, okay. I mean, again, the RU one was different, and I still think that was a huge moment in the game. I guess we can kind of talk about that separately, in the way that I think that, to be fair, we were let off the hook the fact the ref didn't give a penalty there, because that again could have been a huge chance. But really, apart from that kind of one opportunity there, I'd say that he had an all right game.
I think like you say, it's just about maybe the things that aren't always captured on camera for Tim Crull, like the fact. I think it's quite surprising that maybe, like, if he was an outfield player, I think he'd be captain. I think it's just the fact that he's a goalkeeper that maybe he doesn't have the armband, but his presence is just so crucial. And there's a lot of talk about if he's the best goalkeeper in the league or not. I think it's probably a toss-up between him and David Raya, and it's just probably about your sort of personal preferences. I personally am a massive fan of David Raya. I don't think David Raya is as good of a goalkeeper, but he's a better footballer, if that makes sense.
He's like Edison to Alisson, essentially.
And I think Tim Crull, will be a crucial part will play a crucial part this season, and he's getting a lot of plaudits. But like we say, I think maybe that, I don't know. It doesn't. Of course, he's going to get them because, like you say, it's a results-based business, and he's made saves at crucial times. I don't think they were maybe as good as the people are making out, but I'm still a massive fan of Tim Crull, and I still think, like I say, if he's not the best keeper in the league, he's certainly in the top two for me.
Okay, so in terms of, I guess, looking at the team, what was a little bit different this time is that we did have a couple of changes to the squad, which I'm not going to lie to you, when we both saw the team as well, it did make me a little bit nervous, because when you take two players out of the squad, especially when they're two players which right now I feel like define the way we play and define kind of like the turn in form that we've had, and that is in Ben Gibson and Lucas Rupp, especially Ben Gibson at the back, I was very nervous before kickoff. Now, in terms of how their replacements did, I guess I just kind of wanted to talk about those two players in Christoph Zimmerman and Kenny McLean. Now, I guess if we start with Zimmerman, obviously it's his first game he's played in a couple of weeks because he's been out injured, like half the squad has at the moment. But I think it's fair to say, apart from the time that he got caught out where Jamal Lowe got on the inside of him before he hit it straight at the keeper, which was a very good chance. And again, I don't know how much emphasis I can put on that being a mistake as opposed to, a kind of a series of errors leading to that point. How did you feel like he played yesterday? I guess it was now.
Yeah, fine. I think, missing Ben Gibson is always going to be like a huge. It felt like it was going to be quite a big factor in the game, and I was quite maybe pessimistic beforehand because I think Ben Gibson and Lucas Rupp have probably, I'd go as far as maybe saying being two of our best players, and I think they've gone under the radar. Not under the radar, because I think they have received credit, but there's a lot of talk about maybe other players, and I think if actually those two have been so crucial to the way we play and actually our involvement as a football, as a football team and the way we're playing, I think those two have been really crucial in that aspect in particular. But I mean, I have to give credit to Zimmerman. I thought him and Hanley is, those two have been here for a while now, so you'd expect them to be able to have a fairly good partnership together, even if we haven't maybe seen them as frequently as other partnerships. But Zimmerman, he's won this league before. He's played in this league before, and you would expect a good performance from him. And I think, it was a good game. I think I was probably a little bit more pessimistic about Kenny McLean because I'm a big fan of Lucas Rupp, but I think what's really evident about Kenny McLean yesterday and the performances we're seeing from him is because, I sort of put out on our Twitter account. I wasn't saying the fact that I didn't think he was a good player. I just think a lot of Norwich fans perceive him to be somebody maybe he's not. But I think what's evident now is the demands that are placed on him and what he's expected to do. And last season he was essentially our creative hub from that number 8 position, and that's not the case anymore. He's got Ollie Skip alongside him as opposed to Kenny McLean, as opposed to Alex Tate, who's far more technically proficient. And what a brilliant game again by Ollie Skip. I mean, he is Mr. Consistent, isn't he? Played so well since he's come in from Tottenham on loan. But the thing about Kenny McLean, I think he made 6 duels in the middle of the park, and that's just what you want. You want that energy and that work rate, and you're not looking for Kenny McLean to get goal contributions and get those key passes and get in those key areas, because there's Plaqueta, Stiepermann and Amy Buendia behind the striker to do that. What you want from McLean is for him and his defensive midfield partner to provide a base for us to build on, and I think he'd done that. And I think maybe him and Rupp, they're quite similar in ways in what they offer, and I think it's a lot more pleasing to know we've got a similar type of player there as opposed to maybe bringing in a Vrancic or a Light who is going to completely drastically change the way you play, and I think actually maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What I kind of wanted to just raise before I kind of go into Kenny McLean is to do with the 2 centre halves. Now, the thing that kind of really impressed me about those two was their pass accuracy, because obviously we're used to having our kind of, I'd like to say, better distributor of the ball in Ben Gibson there, but between the two of them, I mean, Grant Hanley had a 90% pass accuracy from 73 passes, which is fantastic. And Crystal Zimmerman had an 88% from 56. So it was really nice to see Grant Hanley kind of almost as a skipper step up in that position and play a really crucial role and kind of filling in, if you like, for Ben Gibson. I think what was really nice as well was that, again, it was a partnership where they looked comfortable playing together. And there wasn't any issues in terms of, if anything, defensively, they're probably a better duo as a defensive unit. But, I just think that there was a lot which could have gone wrong bringing a new defender into that mould, especially playing second in the league and a team like the Swansea side. Sure. But it gave me a lot of hope, because now I know we're running low with the 3 centre halves, but if we have to alternate and go through them, if that's maybe Gibson and Zimmerman. Now I'm thinking, what, actually it might not be the end of the world, right? Yeah, so it gives me a lot of kind of hope in terms of, all right, they can, even if Gibson's out, someone can still fill that role as that kind of ball playing defender, which was nice.
For sure. I think one thing that probably is evident is that we're not going to see the same partnership throughout the whole season. There's going to be times when they're going to be all 3, and I'm not sure what option we have on Akin for Mayo, but I'd probably be activating any sort of recall option as a matter of urgency, because I think he'd be a really nice addition just to sort of provide you a bit more depth, and obviously being left-footed as well, it'd be a good natural replacement for Ben Gibson. I think Grant Hanley, again, is a really interesting case, because he, again, is someone who maybe it's come across that we've been a little bit critical of. I know there's a few people on Twitter who are really big fans of him, and And I like Grant Hanley. Like I think he's a really good centre back. I think me and you were maybe just a little bit surprised that we found ourselves up in this position 4 seasons into the Farker and Webber era, that we're still maybe quite light in that area. But I think obviously Hanley moving to the left-hand side, I thought he played really well. 7 successful duels, 6 clearances and 2 block shots. And like you say, the 90% pass accuracy is a really impressive improvement in his game. He's actually got the second highest pass accuracy in the league, which is just behind Chris Willock, Chris Willock has yet to make a start for QPR. He's played just 170 minutes coming off the bench. So that shows you actually just how much of an improvement he's made. And I know, like, the way Norwich play, he's always going to be up there if he's a Norwich centre back, because the way we play with our defenders in that position, there is maybe a desire to just retain the ball as opposed to really try and play sort of anything sort of further through. And I think Zimmerman as well, those long diagonal balls were really impressive. I think as well with Hanley, like you say, the defensive attributes that he brings, he's got the second highest average clearances in the league at 6.1. So it shows you just how versatile he is in the defensive attribute sense in terms of what he offers. And he can actually be quite a progressive centre-back and also provide you with a lot of defensive cover and solidity. And yeah, I find myself maybe being more and more pressed with Hanley as the games go on. The worry is, can we keep him fit? Because, we know that's been an issue with Hanley in the past.
I think the thing is with Hanley is there's always that kind of, not nerve that you get with him, but he's that type of defender just to absolutely clatter someone for absolutely no reason and give away a silly free kick. And it's almost like every 25 minutes he needs to take his aggression out. And you saw it a couple of times. I mean, poor Jamal Lowe got it about 3 times, in the back, absolutely destroyed him. And, it's just those little things that if you can eradicate from his game, I guess we say it's for a lot of Norwich players. If you eradicate from his game, he's a top 10, top 15 Premier League type defender, So I think what was kind of nice, just kind of looking at the wider fullbacks here, before I kind of go into Sorensen, who I'd probably say, being harsh, maybe, or being a critique, was the only player who really, maybe him and Paqueta, the only 2 kind of players I maybe not have questions around, but I think could have probably did a bit better. One thing I just want to kind of hammer home is that kind of ball retention. Now, I know the way we set up and the way we play is we expect this, but for our whole back four to have pretty much 90% on average for passing accuracy is unbelievable. Sorensen had 89 from 35 passes, and Max Aarons had 91% from 23. So, it's incredible the fact that we're retaining the ball across that back four so well. Because if you think back to the way, you typically play when you play it from the back, a lot of people will say, look, for every, goal you score going forward, sometimes it's, you give the ball away and concede one down the other end. And right now that's not happening. I think that's the nice thing, is that if you look back to our campaign where we went up, if anything, we did concede quite a lot. I remember from memory, playing out from the back and whatnot. And we saw it even earlier on in the year against Rotherham, for example, in the early goal we conceded. So it's nice to see that we're getting even more so comfortable playing from the back and retaining the ball. So I just kind of wanted to I guess raise that point, if you like.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think we're seeing different elements of this Norwich City side this season, aren't we? And we're seeing improvements in areas which have been massive areas of weakness. And I put it on the Twitter account at the Revere end, and how sort of Farker has improved massively, like the goal contributions he's getting from his substitutes. I think we've conceded 1 goal from a set piece, penalties or free kicks, and that was the Wayne Rooney, 87th minute winner. So, we talked about Hanley earlier, like how maybe pivotal has he been in that area, but there's been a lot of areas that in previous years have been massive weaknesses and areas of concern, and Farker's really addressing them.
I think in terms of Sorensen, right, he's now, in terms of, if you're looking at solely rating, he got a 6.2 for the game, which I think was quite harsh, because I think you
can excuse Sorensen, because the more that he goes on playing in that position, the more he's going to get targeted. And Sorensen having an average game, that's kind of what Norwich have put themselves in the position, because they haven't got a backup left back. So you're going to have to accept that. If you believe what is being said behind the scenes, that Farker isn't too happy with that decision. But hopefully Quintia comes back. Maybe we should probably just should have sort of integrated Mumba a little bit earlier. That's the only thing I'd say.
Well, literally, that was what I was going to say. Was it's tough to critique him because of the fact that he's effectively out of position, like you say.
Yeah.
And for the first time, we did see someone specifically go out and target him. You know, Steve Cooper was in a position where first half Sorensen had a pretty good game, but second half he stuck Andrew Eye on him, and after that point, I think he got dribbled past 4 times in the first like 20 minutes and a half, and he got pulled pretty much as soon as he could for Bali Mumba. And I think it showed more so that having an actual fullback, even if they're on the wrong side, just positional wise and defensive wise, like Sorensen didn't do anything wrong. It's just when you have someone who is naturally a fullback in that way, it showed even more so the impact I felt like they could kind of have on the team. And, you know, Bali Mumba is a right back, but if you're asking me, not because Sorensen played bad necessarily, but I would have Bali Mumba starting next game in a heartbeat. Give him a couple of weeks now to get integrated back into not necessarily back into the first team, but prepared if Quintia isn't back. Because honestly, with our medical department, it's one of those ones where it's like, okay, he's out for a couple of days. 2 weeks later, you still have no idea what's happened. So for all we know, Quintia could be out for another couple of days, couple of weeks. Yeah, I genuinely don't know anymore.
No,
but
I agree.
I'll let you talk about Bali Mumba, because I guess Bali Mumba was one of those players where, you know, I think if we look back to the start of the window, it was one of those weird players we were like, oh, okay, who's this? And then we learned a bit more about him, and we saw him at Luton, and we were like, okay, I like the look of this kid. He's got a little bit about him. And then it kind of went quiet for a little bit. And now here he is again. So talk to me about Bali Mumba.
It's a really interesting case study, isn't he? I think he's somebody who myself in particular covered quite extensively during the off break. A signing I was really excited about, predominantly because I turned him into a bit of an FM18 beast a few years back. But do you not think that blows my mind with Bali Mumba is the fact that this year in 2020 he was playing for South Shields in the 9th tier of English football, which it's just so impressive. Like, I know he was highly rated anyway. The fact that he went out and this wasn't a move that they were trying to find the right level for it. Bali Mumba don't want to play in 20 football. Like, if you're not going to play him in the first team, you want to go out on loan. And South Shields, it's my understanding that it's a little bit sort of like the Kings Lynn of Sunderland, in the sense that they're their local side, and there's a lot of exchange between the players. And I think maybe if Aaron's move to Barcelona did go through, we might have seen a little bit more Bali Mumba up until this point. But Farke's management of him has been excellent. You know, when he brought him on against Bristol away when we're 3-1 up, I was like, this is genius. Like, you've given him 5 minutes to go and have a little run around, get that not burden or sort of duck off your back in the sense of having your debut, but all of a sudden he's made his debut and that's out of the way. Like, that's another thing that's not to worry about in Bali Mumba's case. And then, I mean, what a call from Farke to bring him and Josh Martin on. Josh Martin maybe struggled to have an impact on the game, but Bali Mumba out wide was excellent. And now I think, like you say, Bali Mumba would have really been wanting a game to come around Tuesday. It's typical for him. But I think what Farke does so well with these young players is just like almost like dropping a carrot, isn't it? And just hanging over them and just teasing them. And so what happens then is you prolong that sort of eagerness from these young players, because once Bali Mumba's made 5 league starts, you'll probably see quite a change in his performances, because all of a sudden that adrenaline would have worn off, and it's then about sort of just leveling out. But if you can sustain it for a longer period of time, it can be really helpful for the development of young players. And he was excellent. It was just that he's probably given a little bit of a license to do it, but you know, just the directness and the way he's running at the opposition fullbacks. I think just on Sorensen though, as well, he's playing against like Connor Roberts, who's probably like the best right back in the league. I think, you know, in terms of crosses, he's right up there, and he's so attacking, and the way that they play, and they went all of a sudden Sorensen had sort of 2 players to deal with Ayew and Roberts on that right hand side, and it's a tough game for Sorensen. He'll have better games for sure, but I think we can all be really happy with the contribution he's made in what could have been a real problematic situation in the left back area. But Bali Mumba, you know, all of a sudden Norwich now have a player who's going to be right up there. And if we can just slowly start to build him up a little bit and not get carried away with ourselves, because it's still a long way to go for Mumba. But I mean, you can't help but get excited about Mumba. You know, we've seen the exponential rise of somebody like Tarek Lamptey and Max Aarons and Reece James, who are playing at this level. Look, if Bali Mumba gets anywhere near those players, it'll be probably been the best transfer business that Webb has ever done. But there's no reason. There is no reason. You know, the ceiling feels very high for Bali Mumbo, I must admit.
I think what was really nice about his, I guess, in-game impact was that there was a period of time from probably like the 50th to the 68th minute before he come on, and even a couple of minutes after that, where it was just relentless pressure from Swansea. When they come out from the second half, they were pressing from the top. They were pushing up to our halfway line. I mean, they were virtually playing on the edge of our box for a period of time, and we were struggling. You know, I think there was no hiding that, and that was really the kind of turning point in the game, was that we knew that we'd probably dominate the last 10, 15 minutes as we do every game, and it was just about surviving that point. And I think what was nice is that as soon as Mumba come on, instead of having a kind of naturally in Sorensen, a more defensive player who was willing to kind of let them come onto him and try and defend that way, it was more like, okay, you've been coming at us for 20 minutes. Now we're going to peg you back. Now we're going to run at you, look to get the ball in. What I found so impressive from Mumba is that I couldn't even tell when he was on if he was left or right footed, because he would hit the byline with his left as if that was his favourite foot and then cut back. And if not, cross with his left. That was a really nice thing. So, now, I don't know too much about his, past, whether or not he is naturally a left or right-footed player in that kind of way, but he looked like he was very comfortable with either foot, which gives me a lot of confidence going forward.
I think. No, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say that I think it shows that actually the need for a natural foot on in those fullback positions is probably diminishing a little bit, and actually it's not about. You know, because you're seeing it more and more often that these players, I mean, just for reference, right? Sam McCallum played right wing back for Coventry, which blew my mind when I saw it. And he's left footed. So, like, it just shows you, like, if you're good technically, you know, and you have got a decent weak foot, but also, like, for me, it's not about that. It's about the approach, the attacking approach. And he just pegged that left hand side back. And Swansea, like you say, Roberts and Ayew, that was the side that I was really worried about, and he just nullified it, because what he done was he just made Ayew track back and push their attacking emphasis right back towards their own corner flag and their own goal. And yeah, it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant performance.
I think what's fair to say is that this Swansea side, wherever Norwich finished this year, this Swansea side will be right there with us. I think this is a team which really impressed me in the way they played. I think, again, we've kind of spoke about the job that Steve Cooper's done with them this year. I think what was really nice to see was, I guess, just to kind of touch on a couple of players, was Corey Smith and Ryan Bennett coming back. I think they both had pretty good games, especially Ryan Bennett.
Kyle Norton as well.
Yeah, Kyle Norton, he played the first half before he come off. And I just think it was nice because it's a really good, well-drilled, well set up, but also they've got some really nice young pieces as well in that team, which, it's just, I think it's just quite nice to see when you've got a team like that. So I fully expect them to kind of 100%. Be a challenger, if you like, with us this year. So it's nice to kind of see us get over the hump and get the points against these guys.
Just another quick word on Swansea, and the job that he's doing there. Their side seems to be is one of these teams in the Championship that seems to get ripped apart every season, and key players leave. I know that Joe Roden was sold, Rhian Brewster left, and they have a lot of loan players. But what they do, in terms at Swansea, is really good. And there's maybe this perception that they're like a ex-Premier League club, so they've got a bit of money. And I know that I think they're struggling a little bit financially, and they don't have the sums to spend on players. I think Corey Smith joined on a free transfer, and there's been a little bit of that, hasn't there? And there's loans and there's freebies, and I think he's a manager that we've seen Graham Potter do so well at Swansea, and actually, arguably maybe not have as big an impact as Cooper has had. And I think he had a fairly promising or impressive CV before this, obviously with England and the 17s won the World Cup. But yeah, I think he's a manager that you'll be seeing a lot more of in the next coming years.
Okay, so is there any final points you kind of wanted to make on the Swansea game before we look ahead to, or look behind, I guess, to the Millwall game on Tuesday?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's too much. I think there's probably going to be plenty more podcasts where we're talking about Emi Buendia again, and so I won't I'll save that for another day. Timu Pukki obviously didn't have the best game in front of goal again. I still feel like he's probably taking a touch too many, and when he is a bit more instinctive, I think that's when he gets his goals and that's when he's at his best. But I do just want to make a quick mention for Alex Tettey, because I said to you when we went 1-0 up on iMessage that it was Tettey time. It was time to bring the big man on. And I think, of course, he probably didn't even touch the ball. I don't know. But I think it's so important to have somebody like him in and around the side. He knows his role in this squad, and he's not kicked up a fuss. He knows why he's here. it's to sort of radiate that positivity, I suppose, and have an impression and rub off on those younger players. And what you need Tetty for those scenarios. You're 1-0 up at home, see the game out, you bring on Alex Tetty, and you just tightens it up. And I think, like I say, he doesn't make a fuss. He knows his role on the side, and I think we're not going to see another season where Tetty's playing probably 20 games. What we are going to see is just those little cameos, and just provides us that defensive solidity. And he won't probably get enough talk in Norwich media, so I just thought I'd mention that for Big AT.
He is that kind of vet that comes in, and he's almost like the Michael McGovern of the team in terms of he's just there.
But he actually plays.
Yeah, well, it's a bit hard for him, but no, he's that kind of player where as soon as they come on, you're shutting up shop, but you know that you're going to do it well. I guess to kind of look back at the Millwall game now, it wasn't the most exciting, so we'll probably have to try and talk about something in this game, but nonetheless, it was a good point, wasn't it?
Yeah, like I said before that we almost seem to be taking these games in tandem, and it'd be interesting maybe to see our different perspective on that game if we hadn't have got that late goal, and it would have been 2 draws, and maybe whilst we would have been quite happy with a point at Swansea, we maybe would have been looking at the Millwall game and being a little bit disappointed. But we're in a really good run at the moment, and in all honesty, I'm not too worried about that game. It was a tough game. Millwall are a really good side defensively, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. Of course, if there's one area for concern for Norwich, it's probably going forward in a bizarre way, which is something that I wouldn't have thought I'd be saying. I think we're just maybe struggling to just break down a low block. And like I said, if Team Yapu can maybe take a touch less in certain situations, and we can get, I think, having a bit more of a natural attacking sort of impetus down that left-hand side, and if it's Quintier or Mumba, then I think that will help as well. But it just felt that was one of those games where we were just never going to score. And ultimately, look, I'm not too disappointed about it because, like I say, we've got the 3 points against Swansea, and that's 2 points per game, which is the average you need to get up in this league. But yeah, we it's one of those tough games, and you're going to have those in the Championship, unfortunately.
Do you worry at all at the fact that it's so evident that at home we just cannot break down a team that sits inside their area?
I wouldn't say worry, because I know that we're extremely good defensively now. And I know we're really shored up that area of the park. And like I say, I think if we do have more of natural width on that left-hand side, and because all of our play with Aarons and Buendia is going down that right-hand side, or not necessarily down that right-hand side, but there are 2 sort of main creative and attacking players on that flank. And if you have Quintier or Mumba and you bring Todd back, and all of a sudden there's a few more options there. And I think if we have a bit more balance, then I would like to think would be a little bit more productive in that sense. But it's like I say, it's the area that Norwich needs to improve in. And I think there's been a lot of work defensively and not conceding from set pieces. If we can just find an extra goal or 2 in those games, and it's just those moments, isn't it? If we can just find that somehow, we'll be a force to be reckoned with in this league. And I don't think we're far away from finding that. We've got 3 centre forward options. You've got Kieran Dowell and Una Hernandez to come back. Josh Martin's now making appearances. Todd's still injured. Plaquette is still settling in. Emi Buendia. Like, we've got options there. I think in a month or so, hopefully, I'd like to think that we would have found our feet in that department, because I don't think really Farker knows probably what his preferred free and behind the centre forward is at the moment, because there's been so many injuries and there's been a fair amount of inconsistency, with all due respect. And I think once that just settles down, I'd like to think that we'll be a little more productive in that area of the pitch.
I definitely think that's probably the missing key right now. Like, for example, against Millwall, we had a total of 27 shots, 20 of which were either off target or blocked shots. So that's a lot of wasted attempts, really, So I think it's really tough, because you've got to look at it at the fact that, hey, we're still winning games, right? Like, what can you kind of moan about? But it's just, I think when you're so used to a Daniel Farker side being so relentless going forward, yet so kind of horrific at the back, he's gone full kind of cycle now, and now he can't kind of score anything, really. And what's going to be really interesting for me is, because I saw a really kind of interesting comment on Twitter, which I guess just kind of put into perspective. Whenever I try to talk about Emi Buendia and Steve Bowen, it's like, well, they don't always gel, but there's kind of like that one bit of magic they always create. And I saw a really good tweet
Mm.
kind of summarizing it, just saying that when you've got those two on the pitch that there is that one little bit of link up which could lead to a goal, and that literally was what happened against Swansea. But if it doesn't happen, like for example, there was that point in the game where Superman laid in Buendia, and Buendia hit it straight at the keeper. So you know that there's going to be that chance coming. It's just whether or not we're going to be clinical enough to take it. And I think right now,
Yeah.
as we've seen with Emi Buendia, it's just the goals don't look like they're there. You know what I mean?
I just wonder if we're maybe utilizing Buendia the wrong way. Like, he's obviously our best player, and he's somebody who gets talked about in the best player in the league discussion. I probably want to see a little bit more consistency from him before we start throwing that about, and I'd be certain to say it. But I think he's taken the fourth highest average shots per game in the league, and it's just, is that him thinking that he's almost got the weight on his shoulders and he's got to take the sort of I suppose impetus to affect games, or is Farke saying, I want you to be that player? And you look at his key passing statistics being like the highest average player in the league for that department, and you're like, well, surely that's where we should be using him. I think maybe if Todd can find a little bit of rhythm, obviously return from injury, and find that consistency of running games, then maybe Todd could be the player who is a bit more effective in the box, and it maybe takes the demand off or the pressure off from Buendia to be that player. But Buendia is an extremely talented footballer, and we're seeing that pretty much every game. I just wonder if maybe we could utilise him in a bit more of an effective way, because I don't think, like you say, he's the most economical in front of goal, and it is getting a little bit frustrating. But Emi Buendia is the one player who I afford the license to like be bad for 89 minutes, because I know he's got that moment of magic in him, and he's such a unique player, and he does get special treatment because he is the one player probably we've signed in the last few years who there was a question mark about his attitude, and there still probably is, but we all know the player Buendia can be, and I think there is an acceptance. I'd like to think that actually it's almost like the Eric Cantona situation when he was at United, that actually some players do just deserve that slightly different special treatment, and he, because the impact he can have in games.
I think it's more that kind of frustration, isn't it? Really, where you're like, look, I know you're so capable of like against Watford away, and after the restart, you can turn and do a turn and kind of bend it into the far corner and whatnot. But when it comes to sometimes like those simple passes through to kind of create that break, you can just completely mess it up. So it is that kind of like not love hate at all, but he's one of those players where we kind of moan about, but it's evidently in I don't know the exact statistic for it, but when he's not there, we don't win. I think
that is it.
until early this season, I think the Huddersfield game, we'd never won a game without Emi Buendia in the side, which was, I mean, scary, really, in a way. But sure. I guess is there anything else you kind of want to touch on from the Millwall game, because there wasn't really a lot that happened, was there?
No, like, it's pretty dull, to be honest, and Norwich do need to be a little bit more effective in that department and in breaking a low block down and stuff. But I think that will come.
I guess to kind of look ahead to what's going to happen after the international break. Now, I think what I'm excited about is that we've got 2 away games coming up next. And the reason I'm quite excited about that is because that's usually the games where we can kind of really express ourselves and play the way that we want to play without having to defend against 11 men in one box. So, but they're not going to be easy at all. So we've got Middlesbrough and then Stoke as the midweek game after. Now, obviously, a Neil Warnock Middlesbrough side is never going to be a fun game to play against. They're going to make it tough. They've made a much better start than what they did in terms of finishing off last year. I mean, they almost got relegated, really. So, similar to the team we're also playing in Stoke, who I watched absolutely dismantle Reading, who at this point is kind of interesting to see if that was just a bit of early season luck that they've got. But, with 3 on the bounce for them losing, it's going to be interesting. Now, in terms of those 2 coming forward, are you nervous about those 2 at all? Is there any kind of initial thoughts that you're thinking about going into those, or are you pretty confident?
It'll be tough games, but it's not games I'm worried about, because if you're worried about playing Middlesbrough and Stoke, then you're probably going to be anxious about every game, right? Like, Norwich should be performing against these, and we should feel confident going into these games. I think it'll be tough because the certainly the way that Middlesbrough operate, I'm not entirely sure how different Stoke are this season, but I think that stereotype of Stoke being a long ball side is probably sort of served its time. But Middlesbrough will be a tough game. So will Stoke, but it's Norwich City, and I think we should take a lot of confidence going into these two games. We've got 2 weeks now to work on stuff. You know, a lot of good feeling around the club. I think we're the only side in the top 6 who is unbeaten in the last 5 games. We're in a real good run of form, and we should just take that confidence. We shouldn't be afraid. We know what a good side we are, and I'd just like to see us just maybe demonstrate that a little bit more in games and show what a good side we are, because we see it in glimpses. But I really want to see us just batter a team. I want to see us do a Bristol City, and be emphatic with our victory.
I think what is interesting is, and I know you highlighted the point that we're the only unbeaten team in the top 6, but us and Middlesbrough are the only unbeaten teams in the last 5 games in the whole division. So if that doesn't have draw written all over it, then I don't know what does. But I guess the kind of question I just wanted to raise to you is kind of like a final point is, obviously a couple of weeks' time, we should hopefully have some players that are getting back to full fitness. You've got your Xavi Quinteras, your Ben Gibsons, your Lucas Rups, and we're not far off as well. Hopefully, the appearances of your Kieran Dowles and even Ono Hernandez is in the next kind of month or so. So, say these players come back, are you thinking that any of these players should kind of not walk straight back into the team, but does a Todd Cantwell get in? Does a Xavi Quintera get in? Would you make any changes when we start against Middlesbrough?
It'll be fascinating, won't it, to see what Farker decides to do, because we know that historically he hasn't changed a winning side, although this year he probably has in I can't think of exact examples, but I know that there's been games that we haven't stuck to. I think Vrancic started against Brentford, didn't he, after being a super sub in the previous game, and we've seen maybe a little bit more of an acceptance to do that. And I think it'd be interesting to see what he does with Ben Gibson, because for me he's a player that probably should start, but then probably a little bit unfair on Zimmerman, and you just wonder if maybe Xavi will come back at left back because he is our only natural player there. But players like Todd, I don't think Todd's done enough to walk straight into the side. I probably would go for Ben Gibson, but I could completely understand if he sticks with Zimmerman. And then once we get players like Byram, Dow, Onel back, you all of a sudden got a real, and if we can get Firmino back in January, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but all of a sudden there's a real cohesive deep squad that Norwich have. And of course we're going to pick up other injuries that we can't sort of foresee, but we have a really good squad. We really do. And we have depth in all the right areas. We've been unfortunate with a few injuries. I think probably been a little bit naive in certain departments in terms of our outgoings, but I think there's a lot of reasons to be positive as a Norwich fan. And like you say, it'll be interesting. I know the next podcast we do will be during an international break, so it'll probably be a little bit more of a reflective one or something a little bit different. But it'll be interesting to see where we are in 2 weeks' time. We always say this, don't we, Alfie? That's a really good barometer of where we are, and it's always fascinating to see how we progress per week and how our moods change as a Norwich fan.
No, I definitely agree. I think what I kind of wanted to say was mainly that left-hand side is the only thing I can kind of really see changes. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we had Quintera and Cantwell in for Poimashav and Sorensen. I think they're the only kind of two which you could potentially foresee a change. And I think as well as Kelly McLean and Zimmerman did last game, I do think that especially Lucas Rupp to come in, I would love to see Ben Gibson come in if he's fit, but at the same time, Zimmerman played a really good game. So I wouldn't complain either way. That's my preference really. But, I guess if there's...
The thing is as well, there's 2 weeks now of training under a Farkas demand, so there's no doubt going to be another 4.
There'll be more injuries, if anything.
That's how it is.
Well, it's probably a kind of good place to end things off. Now, I know this one's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, purely because there wasn't really a whole lot that happened this week, which wasn't really down to us, unless you want to see us kind of extensively look at a 0-0 draw of Millwall. Now, in terms of obviously going forward, if you did enjoy the video today, we'd love it if you could give us a like and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to aim for 100 by Christmas. We'll have to see how that goes, right? But in terms of if you are listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, feel free to give it a rating if you're a rating which is fair, hopefully a 5-star review, and if not, if you could download it on Spotify just so that we can see that you've watched it. But I guess until the next time, it's been myself and Billy, and we'll see you guys later.